when you say, you're not responsible for that polling, fair enough, but there has been a whole stream of polling from all the big polling agencies in Australia that says no is well ahead in this contest. And when people point to previously inaccurate polling, that might have been, 1 or 2% basis points, that is, for example, at 2019. So polling wasn't very wrong, it just didn't quite predict the winner. But it would apply in this case. No polling's been inaccurate enough to say this wouldn't be right. So doesn't that make you think this is in a lot of trouble?
Well, it reminds us, Tom, of something that we've always known, that this is always going to be a contested space. We always knew that this was going to be a very tough job. Referendums aren't easily won in this country, and we knew that when we embarked upon this. So it's told us that this is contested. It tells us we've absolutely got a job on our hands. But as I say, when you actually get out there and talk to Australians about this, and you present the very clear choice that is facing Australians. On one hand, we can vote yes, and we can vote yes to recognise Indigenous peoples, get better outcomes on things like health, education, housing and jobs, and get better value for taxpayer spend. And all the no voters offering is more of the same failed policy, more of the same waste of investment into Indigenous communities where everybody wants to see a real change. So again, when you have that conversation with people, when you talk about the real choice that's on offer here, people understand that the only way for us as a nation to move forward and to see real change for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples is by voting yes. It's a very, very clear choice. And people know that more of the same just won't cut it. We know that the status quo is not working. There's shared frustration on that, and the only way that we can address it and make real change is by voting yes.
When you say we've done our own research, what does that research, if it involves some form of polling, put the national vote at the moment, yes versus no?
I'm not going to go into the details of our own research, Tom. We've been consistent on that all the way through. We have been looking at this for the last 3.5, nearly 4 years now. It shows us exactly what I've just talked about. We've got an absolute battle on our hands, and also that there is a level of softness, there is a level of undecided vote that is absolutely persuadable to vote yes. Make no mistake about that. It is absolutely persuadable to vote yes in such a way that we can achieve a successful vote.
That there's still a big soft no vote, but is it fair to say at the moment that no is leading, even in any research you're doing?
It's fair to say that we've got a very tough job on our hands, Tom. But that's what we're up for. That's what we've been at for the last...
Tough because you're coming from behind?
Tough because referendums are very difficult to win. And there are a lot of people out there that are also facing some really significant issues in their households. We know that cost of living is a big issue, and people have these, really important issues. Everybody feels it. I feel it. We as a campaign feel that every Australian is touched by this. We know it's difficult, but we also believe in, and we've seen consistently on this issue, in the ability of Australians to take on those challenges and also rise to the occasion, be a generous people, and say also, we need a real change for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and that's by voting yes, that's what we get. And by voting no, we get the status quo.
We've seen a lot of people publicly, when asked about why they're either saying no or they're not sure, say, well, we don't know exactly what it would look like. And it is up to politicians to legislate it if indeed it's passed. Has that, in hindsight, been something where more detail might have actually been better? It's something I've seen publicly. It's something I've heard privately too in conversations right across the people I know here, in Melbourne and other places as well. Is there a case in hindsight for more detail?
Well, when people ask for detail, and this has been a consistent experience that we've had over the whole time in advocating for this issue over many years, they're not actually sitting there saying, well, we want a 100-page policy document. What do we want to know? Well, we want to know that we're talking about a representative committee made up of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, chosen by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to give advice to parliaments and governments about getting better outcomes on the ground. And the predominant response that I've got, I had a very strongly opinionated no voter pull me up in the street in Perth last week and confront me with these things. When I actually sat down and said, well, mate, it's about a committee. It's about a committee advising Parliament and government about getting better outcomes on the ground. He turned around and goes, is that it? Is that it? And I said, yeah, that's what this is all about. It's about getting better outcomes on the ground. So Look, I think there still is, unfortunately, a level of misinformation and miscommunication that has been there from the no camp that has tried to turn this into something that it's not. We actually talk about that this is a committee made up of Indigenous people advising on getting better outcomes and better taxpayer spend.
Right, but that's
people
the point,
understand
right?
that. Yeah, that seems fair enough.
If there's umpteen examples of questions that sort of sow doubt around anything from, or how many people will be on it and what sort of advice they can give and so on, if there was something out there in terms of his draft legislation, instead of having to rely on a broad comment like that, you can actually have specific answers for, well, it's up to the Parliament, but here's the draft legislation out there. Is that going to be something you might look back on and say, actually, that might have been the path to go down?
Well, we're certainly not looking back on anything relating to the campaign now, Tom. The only thing that we're looking forward to is the 14th of October and the millions of conversations that we're going to have between now and then. And as I say, when you actually do have that conversation and I will say misinformation that has been spread by those in the no camp about what this is. I mean, when you listen to some of the commentary around this from the no camp, they are determined to talk about everything else other than the actual provision and what this change, the referendum, actually is. That's because they know when Australians do have the opportunity to engage with it, they see it as a very reasonable, a very fair thing to do. And that is why the entirety of our focus between now and the 14th of October, certainly now that postal voting registrations are opened and the enrolments process is just about to come to a close, that's why we are utterly focused on continuing that conversation across the board.
Just finally and briefly then, you talk about how you're getting very positive responses personally versus, I guess, the overall polling. I mean, maybe if I can suggest this, you're quite a personable representative. I've met you before. Are you just sort of getting people telling you what you'd like to hear to a degree? And as a result, the polls are accurate? Does that worry you?
Well, our focus and all of the work that we're doing, the 150,000 households that we've door knocked over the last few weeks, the entirety of the effort of the 37,000 volunteers that are out there on the ground is very targeted at those undecided segments of the Australian voting population. We're not out there talking to our mates. We're out there talking to Australians who have not made their mind up on this. That's why, you know, the polls will do their job, Tom. I'm not dismissing them. There's a lot of really smart people that are involved in that industry and, you know, they've got jobs to do. But our job is not to sit back and comment on what they've got to say. Our job is to have the conversation with the Australian people, which is what we've been doing. You're only going to see more of it between now and the vote. You're going to see Australians out in force on the streets this weekend on the 16th and 17th of September as tens of thousands turn out in support of the yes vote in marches across the country. That's where we'll be, on the ground with the people, talking about why yes vote's important, because the no camp don't have any solutions. They've got nothing to offer other than more of the same. The yes camp, the yes case and the yes vote is about that real practical change for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and Australians want to see that. That gives us encouragement about the period between now and the vote.
Got to leave it there. Dean Parkin, thank you.